People don't just disappear, they choose to leave long before anyone notices. The sentence drifted through Natalie Hayes' mind on a quiet Tuesday morning, long before she understood why it unsettled her so deeply. It came back to her the moment she stepped into the kitchen and saw her husband's coffee sitting untouched on the counter, steam barely curling above the rim. Cole never left without drinking his coffee. Never. At first glance, the Hayes household looked like one of those picture-perfect homes people admired on quiet suburban streets. Natalie taught art at a small community center, and Cole ran a rising cybersecurity firm. Neighbors always said they were the kind of couple who had it all figured out, but Natalie knew that wasn't true. She had seen the cracks, the late-night phone calls Cole silenced as soon as she walked into the room, the tension that lingered in his shoulders, and the way he brushed everything off with the same tired line, "It's just work, Nat. Don't worry." She used to believe him. She wanted to believe him, but the uneasiness that morning clung to her like cold air. At work, she tried to paint with her students, but her mind kept drifting back to the untouched coffee. By noon, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, something small but dangerous. Like the first tremor before an earthquake. Her shift ended just before sunset. When she stepped into the parking lot, the sky had turned a smoky orange, the kind that made shadows stretch long across the pavement. That was when she saw them, two men standing near the line of parked cars, their eyes set on her with unsettling precision. They looked like they belonged in a city alley, not her quiet main town. "Mrs. Hayes," the taller one called out. His voice was calm in a way that didn't make sense. Natalie froze. "Yes." The stockier man stepped closer, his boots crunching over gravel. "You're going to tell your husband something. He knows the terms, and it's time he accepts them." Her pulse stuttered. "What terms?" The thin man smiled, not kindly but knowingly, like he enjoyed watching confusion twist across her face. "Tell him the window is closing, and if he keeps pretending he doesn't hear us, he may lose more than a business deal." The threat lingered in the air long after they walked away and climbed into a black SUV, disappearing down the road. Natalie stood there, shaking, fingers curled tightly around her car keys. She told herself to breathe, to think, to stay calm, but something icy had already settled in her chest. She sped home, half hoping to see Cole's car gone, half praying it would be there. When she pulled into the driveway, her heart dropped. His car sat in its usual place. All the lights inside the house were off. Inside, the silence was too heavy, too deliberate. "Cole." She moved through each room, kitchen, study, bedroom, her voice growing smaller each time. No answer. Then she saw it. His phone, face down on the coffee table. Cole had never left his phone behind. He was the kind of man who kept it on him even when watering the plants. Natalie picked it up, her breath catching when she saw the screen. The call logs were erased, text messages wiped clean, every thread, every contact, gone. Her hands trembled as she dialed the one person she trusted more than anyone, Aaron Whitaker, her childhood best friend. Aaron arrived within minutes, hair still tied back from her shift at the ER. "What happened?" she demanded the moment she saw Natalie's face. Natalie explained everything. The coffee, the men in the parking lot, the empty house, the wiped phone. Aaron listened carefully, arms folded, expression darkening with each detail. "This isn't just a work issue, Nat. Something's seriously wrong." They barely had time to process before a sharp knock echoed through the house. It wasn't frantic. It wasn't gentle. Just precise. "Police," a man's voice called. "We need to speak with Mrs. Hayes." Aaron glanced through the peephole and instantly pulled Natalie back. "Those aren't cops," she whispered. "No badges. And that one of them has the same tattoo as the guy from the parking lot." Natalie felt her heartbeat in her throat. The men outside tried the handle once, then stood silent for a moment before leaving. The front door of the building slammed not long after. Aaron didn't hesitate. "Pack a bag. We're leaving. Right now, in 20 minutes." Natalie threw clothes, documents, and her sketchbook into a small suitcase. Aaron already had her car running. They drove through back roads, away from the town lights, toward a hidden cabin Aaron knew through a friend, a place no one could connect to Natalie. As the trees swallowed the road behind them, Natalie looked back once. Her house, her life faded into the dark. She didn't know it yet, but the real betrayal wasn't the danger at her doorstep. It was the truth waiting to be uncovered, a truth tied to the man she thought she knew better than anyone. The road to Seabrook Lodge cut through tall pine trees and damp morning fog. The world muted except for the hum of Aaron's car. After everything that happened, Natalie didn't trust silence anymore. Silence now carried weight, the weight of missing answers, missing footsteps, and a missing husband who left nothing behind but chaos. For the first couple of days, Natalie lived like a guest in her own skin. Every sound made her stiffen. Every unfamiliar shadow on the wall made her heart leap. The cabin was safe, that was what Erin kept saying, but safety didn't feel real yet. Safety felt like something she used to have, not something she owned now. Erin stayed with her as long as she could, but work dragged her back to town every morning. The moment Erin's car disappeared down the dirt road, Natalie was left in a silence so deep it almost had a heartbeat. On the third morning, she met him. Natalie stepped outside to get a breath of fresh air, and nearly collided with a man locking the door of the cabin next to hers. He stepped back, raising both hands slightly. "Easy there," he said, voice calm and warm like a steady flame. "Didn't mean to scare you." Natalie tightened her sweater around herself. "Sorry, I just didn't expect anyone else so close." "Grant Lowe," he offered, nodding gently. "I stay in cabin 3, been here a few weeks. Needed somewhere quiet to think." There was a heaviness about him, not threatening, just weighted, like someone who had seen too many cases, too many lies, too many endings. Something about that steadiness brought an unexpected ease to Natalie's chest. "I'm Natalie," she replied. "Just here temporarily." Grant didn't pry. He just studied her with a careful, understated attentiveness. "Well, if you ever need anything, directions, help with the heater, someone to remind you that the world isn't ending, I'm right there." It wasn't flirtation. It was grounding. A small anchor offered to someone clearly drowning, but grounding couldn't stop what came next. 2 days later, Natalie woke with a start, running toward the bathroom before she even knew why. Her stomach lurched violently. She gripped the sink, trembling. Erin heard her retching and rushed over. "Nat, what's going on?" "I don't know," Natalie gasped. I just feel sick." Erin stared at her for a long second, processing. "Tell me the truth," she said softly. "When was your last period?" The world stilled. Natalie blinked, searching her memory, but her mind was too fogged by stress and fear to find an answer. Panic climbed her spine. I can't remember." "Okay." Erin reached for her coat. "We're getting a test. Right now." The drugstore was empty that morning, and the drive back felt too short for the dread building inside Natalie. She paced the bathroom while the test developed, whispering to herself, "Please don't be positive. Please." But it was 2 lines clear, sharp, unforgiving. Natalie felt the room tilt. She grabbed the counter to avoid collapsing. "Erin, no, I can't be, not now." Erin placed a hand over hers. "It's going to be okay. We'll figure this out." But Natalie didn't hear her. She was staring at the test like it was a sentence. She was pregnant with Cole's child, a man who vanished, possibly by choice, leaving her with his enemies and his lies. That afternoon, while Erin stepped out to take a call, there was a light knock on the door. Not sharp like the fake officers from before, just gentle, cautious. "Natalie." Grant's voice called. "Just checking in." She hesitated, then opened the door a crack. "Hi, you okay?" he asked. "You look like you've been hit by a freight train." Natalie almost laughed. "Almost." "Rough morning." Grant studied her face. "You don't owe me details. But you should know something." He exhaled slowly. "I didn't mean to overhear earlier when you and your friend were talking outside." "About Cole." Natalie tensed. Shame rose like heat under her skin. "What about him?" Grant hesitated, choosing every word with care. "I know people who know him. I've looked into a few things these past days. I thought he was in danger at first. But Natalie, he wasn't taken. He left." Her breath caught. No, that's not. Cole would never. He took out loans, big ones," Grant said quietly, "from the wrong people. And when he couldn't pay, he emptied your home safe. Every dollar. And then he vanished. By choice." The humiliation hit harder than fear ever had. Natalie felt her heart tear, slow and painful. "He left me," she whispered. The words stung her mouth. "He left me with enemies and debts and our child." Grant's expression softened in a way she had never seen before. "Natalie, look at me." She lifted her eyes, barely. "You're not responsible for his mistakes. You didn't create this nightmare. You're surviving it," he said. "And now you're carrying a life. You fight for that life, and for yourself. Not for him." The words broke something open inside her. Tears she'd been holding back for days finally spilled over. Grant didn't touch her, didn't push closer. He simply stood there, giving her space to fall apart without shame. That was what she needed most. As evening settled over the trees, Natalie sat alone on the cabin steps, staring into the dark forest. Her world had collapsed, but somewhere in the wreckage, a tiny spark of clarity flickered. She had hit bottom, but maybe from here, she could climb. Because from the moment Natalie's despair reached its deepest point, something shifted. Fear gave way to reason, And now, she would rebuild her life in a way Cole never expected. The night Grant revealed the truth about Cole, something inside Natalie quietly collapsed, but something else, something steadier, began to form. By morning, the grief had not disappeared, yet it no longer swallowed her whole. It settled into something sharper, cleaner, a new kind of resolve. That was where the next chapter of her life truly began. Grant seemed to sense the shift before she spoke a word. He didn't offer speeches or sympathy the next day. Instead, he knocked on her cabin door holding a folder under his arm and said, "Natalie, you need options. Let's build you some." Inside that folder were listings for medical assistant positions across Portland, real opportunities, places willing to overlook gaps in her paperwork and offer quick onboarding. Natalie scanned the pages, overwhelmed. "You did all this?" she asked. Grant shrugged lightly. "You have a baby coming. You need stability. And I know the city. I know good people." He paused, then added quietly, "You deserve a life that's yours." It was the first time she had heard someone say that out loud. The words settled into her like warmth in winter dart within a week. Grant arranged interviews, helped her file new documents, and even found a small apartment complex near Back Cove with strict security and a manager who owed him a favor. He didn't push her, didn't insist on being involved. He simply cleared the road ahead so she could choose her direction. Natalie accepted a position at a modest family clinic in Portland. The hours were steady, the staff kind, and the work meaningful. For the first time in months, she felt grounded. She learned which streets were fastest during morning rush, which cafes made the best tea coffee still turned her stomach, and which evenings she could feel her baby shift beneath her ribs. The pain of Cole's betrayal still lingered, but it no longer dictated her days. Instead, her silence became her armor. She refused to say his name, refused to search for him, refused to give him the privilege of her grief. People in town whispered, sometimes gently, sometimes carelessly, did she ever find him? What really happened to Cole Hayes? Natalie answered none of it. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't denial. It was release. By month 7, she no longer flinched at every unknown number. She didn't wake up expecting danger. Her world had narrowed into something simple: work, rest, and preparing for the child who had done nothing wrong. Grant checked in occasionally, always respectful, never assuming. He'd stop by after long days, bringing dinner from a nearby Italian place or dropping off supplies she hadn't realized she needed. One evening he found her sitting on the floor, trying to assemble a crib with a tiny screwdriver. "That's not going to survive a week," he said. Kneeling beside her, Natalie huffed a tired laugh. "You sound very sure, because the screws you're using aren't the right size," he said, tapping the frame. "Let me help." There was something grounding about the way he worked. Calm, patient, capable. Natalie watched him tighten the last bolt, the crib finally standing steady. "Grant," she said softly, "you've done more for me than anyone. More than I ever expected." He paused, hand still on the crib rail. "You needed help. That's all." "It's not all," she whispered. "You didn't have to stay." Grant exhaled slowly, as if searching for the right words. "Sometimes people walk out of our lives," he said. "And sometimes, we choose to stay. No conditions. No scorekeeping. Just choice." His words sank deep, but he didn't step closer. Didn't push for more. That restraint was what made Natalie trust him. Weeks later, after a long night of contractions, Natalie held her son for the first time. Under the soft hospital lights, Grant stood just outside the door, giving her privacy, yet present enough that she didn't feel alone. She named the baby Liam. He arrived into a quieter world, one rebuilt from the ashes of someone else's destruction. A world where Natalie was no longer defined by abandonment but by resilience. The first months were hard, but they were hers. And gradually, life settled into a steady rhythm. Morning feedings, shifts at the clinic, walks around the waterfront, evenings when Liam fell asleep on her chest. Her strength grew with each sunrise. Years slipped by gently. Liam grew into a bright, curious boy with Cole's eyes but none of his shadows. Natalie grew to stronger, braver, more whole. She earned promotions at the clinic, managed a team, and took pride in the stability she built from nothing. And Grant, he never left. He became the quiet constant in their lives, showing up when he was needed, disappearing when space was required. Not taking, not demanding, just steady support, like a lighthouse always visible in the distance. Cole, on the other hand, never resurfaced. No calls, no letters, no apologies. Not even a whisper of his existence floated back to her. And Natalie didn't seek it. She let his memory dissolve into the past. exactly where it belonged. By the time Liam turned 5, Natalie's life was unrecognizable from the wreckage she once crawled out of. She had built something sturdy, something peaceful, something entirely her own. She believed her story with Cole was finished, but life has a way of circling back, and when Natalie finally stood firm on the foundation she rebuilt, fate pulled her back to the place where the nightmare began, not to reopen old wounds, but to close them forever. Time moved quietly after those years of rebuilding. Natalie never marked the days by grief anymore. She counted them by small victories: Liam learning to write his name, her own promotion at the clinic, the way the mornings no longer felt heavy. The past became something that lived behind a closed door in her mind. She didn't open it, didn't rattle it, didn't check whether it still hurt. But life has a sense of timing. It brings us back to the beginning only when we're strong enough to face it. That was how part 4 began. That happened on a soft spring morning, when Grant suggested a weekend trip before Liam's 6th birthday. "Let's take him somewhere new," he said. "Maybe the coast. Kids love the water." Natalie knew what he meant before he said the name: Rockport, the town where her old life burned to the ground. She expected fear, expected the old anxiety to claw at her chest. But nothing came, just a quiet curiosity, a gentle acknowledgement. "I think," she said slowly, "I'm ready." The drive to Rockport felt different than the panicked escape she once made under the cover of night. The trees looked greener. The ocean stretched wide and blue, not like a threat but like a welcome. Liam sat in the back seat, kicking his feet and humming to himself. Grant drove with one hand resting loosely on the wheel, steady as ever. When they reached the edge of town, Natalie waited for the dread to return, but all she felt was distance, the emotional kind, the kind that told her she had grown miles beyond whatever happened here. Rockport wasn't a battlefield anymore. It was just a place. They walked near the old marina first. The air smelled of salt and cedar shingles warmed by the sun. Natalie remembered once standing on this very boardwalk, shaking, terrified of the shadows following her. Today, she stood straight, her shoulders relaxed, her heartbeat steady. Liam tugged her sleeve. "Mum, look, boats." She smiled. "Yes, baby, they're beautiful." Grant watched her quietly, hands in his pockets. "How do you feel?" he asked softly. Natalie thought for a moment. "Like I'm visiting someone else's memories," she said. "Not mine anymore." They wandered through the old streets, passing the cafe where she and Cole used to share muffins on Saturday mornings. The window was different now. New paint, new chairs, new owners. Life had moved on, even when she hadn't realized it. She didn't search for Cole's face in the crowd, didn't wonder if he lived nearby, didn't ask herself whether he thought of her. She was done giving him space in her thoughts. At midday, they walked down to the shoreline where the cliffs met the sea. The wind was brisk but comforting. Liam ran ahead, leaving footprints scattered in the wet sand. Natalie followed slowly, letting the ocean air fill her lungs. This was the place she once associated with fear. Now it held something else: closure. Grant joined her, standing a few feet behind, giving her room yet anchoring her at the same time. "Natalie," he said gently, "you don't have to pretend this is easy." "I'm not pretending," she replied. "It is easy, easier than I ever imagined." She looked at the water shimmering beneath the sun. "I thought coming back would hurt, that it would make me remember everything he did, but it doesn't. I just don't care anymore." Grant didn't interrupt. He let her speak at her own pace. "I built a life without him," she said. "A good one, a peaceful one. Liam laughs every day. I get to wake up without fear. I know who I am now." She paused, eyes warming with a truth she had waited years to say. The greatest revenge against someone who abandoned you is simple: you build a life they no longer deserve to be part of. Grant's expression softened, pride flickering in his eyes. Natalie walked closer to the waves where Liam was stacking rocks. She knelt beside him, brushing his hair gently. "Sweetheart," she said, her voice quiet yet firm, "we survived. We're happy, and that's enough." Liam looked up, grinning. "Are we gonna live here?" "No," she laughed softly. "We already live somewhere perfect." He ran off again, chasing goals, the sound of his laughter echoing across the beach. Natalie stood and turned back toward the town one last time. The buildings, the streets, the memories, all of it remained where it belonged. Behind her, she didn't come looking for Cole. She didn't need an apology. She didn't need closure from him, because closure wasn't something he could give. Closure was something she had built with her own hands. Grant approached her, stopping beside her but not touching unless she wanted him to. "You ready to go?" he asked. "More than ready," Natalie said as they walked back to the car. Hand in hand with Liam, Natalie felt a quiet finality settle into her bones. A truth so clean it nearly startled her. Cole hadn't disappeared from her life. She had erased him from the place he no longer deserved to stand. He didn't vanish from Natalie. Natalie turned him into someone who no longer existed in her world, and that was her mic drop, silent, powerful, undeniable.